Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is, at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you as usual. We are going to have un fabuloso, uno que va a ser super fabuloso, a very, very, very good show for you today because we're going to be covering a new report. We're also going to be covering, before we get to the show, a very serious issue about profiling that has really gotten me to the core. But before I get started, I want to remind folks that this is a progressive call-in show. Telephone number 646-716-5812. Again, that number is 646-716-5812. I want to also remind all of those that are coming in right now to go ahead and share this on your Facebook page. Why do I want you to share this on your Facebook page? Because more importantly than ever, it is imperative that those of us who are progressives, those of us who want to get real information out there, those of us that really have that particular interest in making sure we start moving in the right direction, that we are also the purveyors. We are also the distributors of information, the distributors of not only information, the distributor of that which will make this a better country. And as we all know, we can't depend on the mainstream media right now because, again, they are in bed. They must be in bed with those people who pay them. Those who brung you there, that's who you keep there. So please remember, folks, give us a call. Welcome aboard, Michael Dean Newton. Welcome aboard, Michael Rudnin. How are you guys doing? I hope you all had a wonderful weekend. Jody Kemp, welcome aboard. Look, this is important, folks. Go ahead before you even start listening. Please go ahead and share the program on Facebook Live, or rather on Facebook, your wall, on Facebook, your page, on Twitter, on Tumblr, on Instagram, on the Yellow Man. Please go ahead and share the program. This is a progressive show. We're going to be speaking about some important issues today. Again, we're also a call-in show, so if you want to hear your voice, get your voice over air, you can give us a call at 646-716-5812. Again, that number is 646-716-5812. And of course, if you're watching this on our page, on Politics Done Right with Egberto Willies page on Facebook, I want to ask you, first of all, like the page. If you're on Politics Done Right with Egberto Willies, like the page. Likewise, I'd like you to go ahead and like follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle is Egberto Willies, EGBERTO WILLIES. Again, that's EGBERTO WILLIES, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive show. We need your support. Please remember that if you want to support us, get us a coffee. Patreon.com/politicsdoneright. patreon.com/politicsdoneright. The only way we're going to keep the progressive information out there is if you provide that support. And what we ask you is we want hundreds, if not thousands, of people to support the show at very small increments. So we ask you to go to patreon.com, patreon.com/politicsdoneright, and do your good deed to ensure that progressive message gets out. Okay, what are we going to talk about today? Today, the topic of the show, the American March to Inequality. Why the UN Alston report alarms the Trump plutocrats. Actually, that's the blog of the week. The title of the show is Trump is not making America great again. He is terrorizing his base and everyone else. Trump and company, subtitle, Trump and company cannot survive. They cannot survive the decimation they're inflicting on all Americans, and that includes their base, without a democracy-killing enslavement. And I want people to understand what that means, okay? Trump is doing a whole lot of bad things right now, and so far it's working fine for them. But let's remember this. This eventually, even those people that we think are bots right now, they're not. There are extenuating circumstances, but even those people that a lot of folks just think are bots and they have no respect for supporting and believing in Trump, etc., etc., etc. Those people are going to come to the realization because ultimately everybody eventually comes to the realization. And when that occurs, here's my concern. My concern when that occurs is that we get into a space where democracy would have already been gone, such that there would be very little recourse, if any. And that is where we as progressives are fighting to make sure that we don't get there. It's so imperative that we don't get there. If you're just joining us, folks, please go ahead and share this show on your Facebook wall, your Facebook page, your Twitter handle, everywhere. It is imperative that we get the message out. So, Trump and company continue to lie to Americans about the effect of their tax cut scam. After laying the groundwork, they are now blaming the expected health insurance premium rise on Democrats and the Affordable Care Act. It's not true, but that's what they're doing. And there's not enough pushback from people explaining to our brothers and sisters why that is simply a lie, why that is simply not true. So, these guys are all in the fascist form of misinforming and control. Many of their followers are still in bot mode. They're still in bot mode. One can only hope that when they leave that mode, we still have a country to fight for. And I'm not saying that as some form of a cliche. Hi, Michael Cisak. Hi, Milton Gibson. Welcome aboard. I am not saying that just as a cliche or something for people to get scared about. I mean what I say. The truth of the matter is the institutions of this country are being challenged by Trump as he makes people not believe in them. As people lose faith in the FBI, as people lose faith in the Justice Department and all these different divisions under the executive being the president and everything on the executive side of you have our triple types of government: judiciary, legislative, and executive. What happens then is anything that comes out in the investigation about Trump or anybody else won't be believed by enough people so that nothing gets done, so that he can't be impeached, so that he cannot be removed, assuming that he committed crimes, which most of us pretty much know that he has committed several crimes. So we have to be the ones that are promoting and pushing this. We have to be the ones that are pushing truth. And that's what we intend to do. But before I get started, there's something that is dear to my heart that I want to talk about. And it has to do about ethnicity, race, profiling, etc. And I want you to listen. I want you to listen in detail, please. My white audience specifically is the ones, I want to talk to all my audience, but my white audience specifically, I ask that you stick around. Usually a lot of times, whenever one speaks about racial issues and all of that, you'd get a whole lot of white folks that would think, oh, there goes the attack on me again, goodbye. This is not what this is about, however. This is about the solicitation of the help of moral white people. I repeat, the solicitation of the help of moral white people. And I think it was one of my activist friends in back in town that had a meme that said something to the effect, we don't need white allies, we need white accomplices, or something like that. If I got that wrong, whoever it is that I remember reading that, please get it right. But I need my white audience to listen to me on this one. So don't leave out of saying, oh, there they go again. They're going to be just hitting me up. I'm one of the good ones. That's what this is all about. If we're going to solve a problem, we have to be tactical and we have to do it right. So I don't know if I queued it up. So while I speak to you, let me make sure I can get to the story, because I wrote it this morning. It wasn't the blog that I was going to write this morning. This wasn't something that I was going to write this morning, but I had to. I saw the last straw with that little girl that was out on the street selling water. So I want you to hear me out on this, and then we need to hear from you. And here it goes. Trump effect. POC makes you suspect, or being a person of color makes you a suspect. To many white people, wake up, wake up, wake up. And it goes as follows. Trump cannot change who you are, but he sure can highlight what lies within. In that respect, I want to give Donald Trump a big thank you for the Trump effect. He has encouraged many white people to to not hide behind the silence of only their thoughts, but hear this. I love living in the South. I love it. A white friend once asked me, why don't I move to the West, California, Oregon, Washington, or the Northeast? I do not know how you can stand all the racism down there, he said. I told him that what I loved about the South is you always kind of knew where you stood. Everyone was polite. Those who did not want you in their lanes did so subtly, if with a certain degree of deniability. But let's not make believe that there is much difference within the people's hearts. I am followed around in stores, whether in Seattle or Houston, just for my hue. Nor should we forget the Boston busing desegregation riots. And of course, police officers murdering or mistreating innocent people of color is not relegated to the South at all. It is getting tiring, however, day in and day out, to watch not only adults, but kids stressed and harassed just for who they are. The viral video of the white woman calling the cops on a young girl selling water to raise money for a trip shows the catch-22 many people of color are in all of the times. They stereotype many people of color as dependent. Yet at a young age, when a young black girl gets entrepreneurial, she must face the police? I watch young white children set up lemonade stands and cake stands in my neighborhood, as they do in communities throughout America. The thought has never crossed my mind to call the cops or health department to ask if they had a permit or food license. What within one's core, within one's inner being, what kind of intrinsic hate for someone of another hue leads one to do that? I don't know. You tell me. What makes one harass and call the cops on a black family barbecuing on a beautiful day in the park? What makes one call the police on a black man moving into his apartment, lyingly accusing him of having a gun? What makes a jury deadlock on the murder of a Latino from an overzealous private citizen, as occurred here in Houston recently? And now this from the San Francisco Chronicle. And this is what they say, quote, a black firefighter conducting city-mandated inspections around homes in the Oakland Hills was reported to police and on a separate occasion questioned and videotaped by a resident who found him suspicious, even though he was in full uniform with his fire truck parked nearby. Several Oakland firefighters say the incidents raised concerns about safety and racial bias. What gives? Really? What gives? Black on black crime or person of color on person of color crime as justification for their bias or profiling? Guess what? Intraracial and or intra-ethnic crimes are statistically similar. Your impressions are wrong. If impressions really mattered, people of color should be terrified of white people. After all, not only do they know the violence of the past that they inflicted on their bodies and mind, but even with the liberation, the mental terrorism and sometimes physical terrorism is still present. But we know how to compartmentalize. We do not paint with one brush as much as is used to paint us. The reality is, these are not a people of color problem. This is a disease that has always been there, festering. We were slowly curing it, but Trump, with the help of many, has caused it to explode. People of color cannot solve it. It will take moral white people to do so. Rest assured, all of us people of color who you work with, generally on a progressive agenda, know one thing. If you do not actively fight this problem in your spheres of influence, where much is said and done that many of us people of color are not privy to, but where change can occur, your silence makes you complicit. 646-716-5812. is the call-in number, and that's not the blog of the week. That is just something that I came up with this morning, actually about 3-4 hours ago, after seeing that little girl and this woman just irate that she's selling water on the streets, irate about it. What within your inner core? What within your inner core could make you feel like you seen an 8-year-old little girl? Just like I see 8-year-old little girls all around Kingwood with lemonade stands, with bakery stands. They don't go get permits for that. It's a part of the community. They're in the community. Why would I even conceive of calling a cop for these folk? This woman decided that she needed to call the cop. Let me tell another quick message to my white brothers and sisters. Anytime you call, a lot of you don't believe it, but this is true. And if you're just joining us, folks, it's very important that you share this. It is so very important that you share this. Anytime you call a cop on a person of color, black, Latino, or whatever, you have a responsibility. You have a responsibility, one, to be absolutely sure you are not trying to call that cop out of your own racial bias, because the reality is an encounter of a cop with a police officer with a person of color, especially when reported by a white person, many times have fatal outcomes for that person of color. I know it's hard for you to just accept that and say, oh, well, that is overgeneralization. Or let me tell you something. There's much not reported. There's much not seen. We get the ones that really make the news big. We don't get the mistreatments. We don't get the slap-arounds. We don't get the mental terrorism that occurs to prove that, no, you're okay, you really belong there. For the many, many times that people just look at our bodies as suspect and report it. And you must feel the humiliation of somebody coming to you and say, do you really belong here? Something that you don't have to go through because you walk through the neighborhood and nobody assumes or make false assumptions. And then again, most of what occurs in your neighborhood has nothing to do with that person, the one of the minorities, whoever that may be in your neighborhood, generally speaking. I can tell you most of the theft that occur here in Kingwood, most of the drug use that occur here in Kingwood, most of all these things that occur in Kingwood look nothing like me. And that's all that says is that the majority of the population here looks nothing like me. Again, white, moral people must step up. That's what it's all about. If we're going to really change the country, especially progressive white moral people, you got to step up. You have to be more than just saying I'm an ally and I agree with you here and there or whatever. You also have to try to empathize and understand. And the reason you have to try and empathize and understand is because people are getting killed, people are getting records, people are getting harassed, people, and these things also have a mental component that many won't want to accept. If anybody wants to talk about this before I jump into the blog of the week, 646-716-5812. Again, that number is 646-716-5812. I'll just wait a couple of minutes to see if any calls come in for that one. And then we'll go to the real blog of the week. But folks, this is very, very serious. And again, it touched me again because of that little girl twice. You know, we look at the young boy playing with the BB gun. Somebody reported it as, oh, he has a gun. And even though when they reported, they said, we don't know if it's a real gun or not, the cops came there a shooting. They came there, drove the car up, the cop immediately opened the door and shot and killed a, 12-year-old or so? You know? Kids. It's not only the adults that are suffering this from murder, cops that murder. It's not only the adults that are suffering this stuff from racial bias. It's a lot of people. And while I try as a blogger, I tried never, as a blogger, as an activist, as a radio show host, I try to keep race as being a very small component of my shows, specifically because America is still predisposed to see a black host, a black blogger, a black activist, and think that what they are working on are black issues. I work on human issues. I work on middle class and poor issues. So, but this is serious, and this is something that I think needs to be addressed so badly. And I think you have to be empathetic and understanding. And like I said, silence is another form of acceptance. Silence is another form of complexity. Or rather, complicity. But let me see, since I have no calls on this issue right now, what I'm going to do is go with the blog. Well, no, it looks like I have some messages on Facebook that needs to be addressed on this issue. So what I want to do is I better go there and do that. That's what I'll do. Because what happens, folks, is this issue is serious and it costs lives. Ultimately, it does cost lives. A lot of people don't see it that way because, again, it doesn't happen to folks. And now it always behooves me why things have to look like those for people to believe it happened. Look like them before it means anything. Why can't it just look like that it has happened to another human being before it means something? Why can't it just be that way? Why can't we stop seeing through hue? Why can't we? It's not a difficult thing. I mean, I've been seeing through hue, I can say that the vast majority of my life, well, from the time that I had cognition. It's hard for me to believe that most people cannot, will not, or choose not to be that way. It's behooved me that people continuously try to find excuses to justify profiling, to justify discrimination. Before I even answer any of these questions, for those people who think, well, there are reasons to profile. No, there's no reason to profile. Let me tell you why. Because the day the profiling stops working, the day a white person carries a bomb on the plane. And guess what? It has happened. All right, let's go ahead and get to some of the messages before I go forward, because I think this is important. Again, folks, if you're just joining the program, also please go ahead and share. That is how we get these messages out. So go ahead and share on your wall, on your Tumblr, on your page, everywhere else. So let's go ahead and talk to some of you and see what some of you think on this issue right off the bat. If this thing will cooperate with me, which it rarely wants to cooperate, but let's see what you're talking about, and then we'll go to the blog of the week. And it looks like I'm going to have to go through the blog of the week quickly, but I didn't expect to spend this much time on this issue, but I saw some messages that I think I want to address. Come on, let's get there. Wow. For some reason, I'm not able to scroll. I don't know what's going on here. Let's see. Come on, folks. Help me out here. Let's see. Scroll. Well, let's see if I turn it around if it'll decide to scroll. Okay, it still won't scroll, but here we go. Michael Rednan says, Trump crimes, foreign bribery. That's not what we want to see if anybody wants to talk about the other issue. Well, I don't see it here, and the scroll won't work. So it looks like what I'm going to have to do is just go ahead and go to the blog of the week. That's what I have to do. That's what I'll do. Okay, that's what I'll do. I'll just go ahead and we'll go ahead and hit the blog of the week. So, folks, do you know what time it is?
It's time for the weekly blog post.
Okay, the blog post of the week, I must admit, wasn't one that I wrote. But the reason that I'm bringing this particular blog of the week up is that it is very important. It is superbly important that we talk about what is happening with our level of inequality here and how it affects us in general. There's a reporter that gives me Juan Cole. He gives me the rights to redistribute a lot of his writings, and I like to do that because I think it is very important. He usually has a very, very important message, and this is one of the most important ones that I know he released. So as I bring that blog up now, I'm going to talk about it. But here we go. The title of his piece is, and as soon as it comes up, I'll tell you what the title of his piece is. The American March to Inequality, Why the UN Alston Report alarms the Trump plutocrats. Okay? And it goes as follows. Ann Arbor, it's no surprise that flags for the plutocrats in charge of the U.S., like Nikki Haley, are squawking about the report on American poverty just issued by UN's special rapporteur Philip Alston. It throws loads of light on how unequal a society America is, how it is marching rapidly toward even greater third world levels of inequality, and how peculiar the U.S. is as a land of rapacious robber barons and 40 million completely marginalized poor. Yepe, we got 40 million poor people in this, at least 40 million poor people in this country. The hardest thing for journalism to get right is big structural changes. I was working journalist in my youth, and when I was blogging events like the Iraq War and the Arab Spring, I was often using journalistic techniques. Your time scale is a past few hours. Your focus on the big political players. Personality matters. Details matter. You're zeroed in on trees. This is Juan Cole speaking. Only on a sabbatical, rare enough, do most journalists get a chance to step back and consider the forest. Academics, in contrast, are so consumed by really big forests that they often forget that there are any trees. Hidden the balance is the essence of good social reportage. Now, big social statistics are hard to envision. That in a country like the US, with some 320 million people and an $18 trillion annual gross domestic product, the social statistics could be rapidly changing is also hard to fathom. It's hard to believe those things are changing so rapidly. They are changing, the UN says, decidedly for the worse for tens of millions of people. A lot of people don't see that. They just think they are in a cocoon within their own spheres. But to what's happening to the vast majority of the country, it is becoming very clear. The GOP tax massacre of early this year will transfer over time trillions of new dollars to the already obscenely wealthy and result in diminished government services and much smaller safety net for the rest of us. It was a tax cut, almost all of the benefits of which went to 0.1% of the population. And that's true. It will make them even richer, adding billions to their billions, and make the rest of us poorer. This is a structural change in society that with massive implications. And here we go. Already, the top 0.1% holds as much of the country's wealth as the bottom, hear this, 90%, i.e., almost everyone reading these words. Alston writes the following. These are enumerated. And I want you to listen specifically and listen to what this means to you, yourself, when you hear these things tick off. Because a lot of it affects you. U.S. infant mortality rate in 2013 were the highest in the developed world. Americans can expect to live shorter and sicker lives compared to people living in any other rich democracy, and the health gap between the U.S. and its peer countries continue to grow. I hope you watched the Divided States of America yesterday. Forgot his name right now. What is his name? Whatever his name is. Whatever his name is. He had a great show on CNN last night about the Canadian healthcare system. Stuff that we normally don't see. At least he was able to talk a little bit about it. But it was worth watching. Kumar Bell. All right, W. Kumar Bell. U.S. inequality levels are far higher than those in most European countries. Neglected tropical disease, including Zika, are increasingly common in the USA. It has been estimated that 12 million Americans live with a neglected parasitic infection. A 2017 report documents the prevalence of hookworms in Lowndes County, Alabama. So as you can see, we're already approaching third world status. The diseases that we get, the life expectancy, the type of health care that we get. If you are not the moneyed people, we're a third world country. Continuing with the bullet points. The U.S. has the highest prevalence of obesity in the developed world. In terms of access to water and sanitation, the U.S. ranks 36th in the world. 36. We are ranked 36th in the world for the health of our water. America has the highest incarceration rate in the world, ahead of Turkmenistan, El Salvador, Cuba, Thailand, and the Russian Federation. Its rate is nearly 5 times the OECD average. Come on, folks. And this is the United States. This is Make America Great Again? Come on now. And the last bullet point. The youth poverty rate in the United States is the highest across OECD, with 1/4 of youth living in poverty compared to less than 14% across the organization of, I don't remember what that stands for. Anyhow, OECD. The UN report violates the basic tenet of the propaganda of our robber barons, which is that things are getting better. No, they're getting worse, and dramatically so. Don't believe the crap. That is one of the reasons I say you can't just watch mainstream media and hear, oh, this is the biggest growth in a while. We have gone down to an unemployment not seen in over a decade. All those things are true. But here's the truth. You're going with an unemployment rate that is lower in decades, but guess what? People are making less. I was sitting down in Starbucks yesterday with a friend of mine that just retired, and here's what he said. He couldn't believe it. He's been in construction, and he did constructions with the city inspector, that sort of a thing, and he said the following. He said, Egberto, I was going over wages with a friend, the wage sheet. When I was 30 years ago, when I was a little over 18 or 19 years old, I was making $7 or $8 an hour doing construction work. He said the guy gave me the sheet, and he showed me between $7 and $9 to do the same work. And he said, this is not right? I mean, 30 years ago, that's what I made. The guy was shocked. And I was explaining to him that is what stagnation looks like, wage stagnation looks like. That is what the transfer of wealth looks like. Because the only way, in America, the only thing we talk about is growth, 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 growth. All these companies want to grow, right? But the American population isn't growing all that much. So let's say the American population is at a standard state. And let's say you just sell burgers. The only way for you to keep selling X amount of burgers is to increase the price of X amount of burgers and show growth in your company, is to sell more burgers. But as you sell more burgers, you may be taking away business from somebody else. And, so what happens in the totality of things is even though you are making the same profits before, because your stockholders want to see growth, you may try to sell more burgers. If you can't sell more burgers, you may increase the price. If you increase the price, you may also have to keep the wages, even with inflation, keep the wages of increasing the prices, inflation, keep the wages of your customer, your employees the same. That wage staying the same is stagnation, because the people that are seeing the increased pricing, the benefits from the increased pricing are those stockholders, those executives. They see the increased pricing. The average worker is not seeing it. So what we have in the policies that we implement, both in the private sector and in America as a whole, the way we treat taxes, is we take care of the millionaires, we take care of those people that have stocks, etc., that want growth, and everybody else be damned. And Trump came in and did it on steroids. He gave away $1 trillion, not to most people, but to a very select few, and it is up to us to let people realize how. Last show, I gave you all the ways that tax cut did it, but Juan Cole, in this latest piece, goes into detail as well. Now, the UN report violates the basic tenet of the propaganda of our barons, right? Which is that things are getting better. They're not. One reason Nikki Haley, current ambassador to a UN she doesn't believe in, and the former governor of South Carolina is in such dudgeon about the UN report, is that she exemplifies everything wrong with America. She ran a state with one of the lowest life expectancies in the U.S. and one of the highest infant mortality rates. And you'll find that across conservative states. High mortality rate, high infant mortality rate, and that's by definition. If you give your people less services, if they have less access to health care, they die. So implicitly, these guys are committing justifiable murder. I'm sorry. If you know that giving less services to give a few corporations breaks is going to kill your citizens, then don't kill your citizens. Do what it takes not to kill them. Anyhow, and the reason South Carolina elites cannot believe these statistics and are so embarrassed by them is that they're deeply about race and class. Race and class. As usual, those names, those terminologies. African American health statistics in South Carolina are in third world territory because the state is run as a caste system. Haley, an Indian American, managed to make the leap into whiteness by rendering her Sikhness ambiguous and often talking with an evangelical and by marrying into the dominant caste. Yeah. The Trump tax massacre was intended to take even more from African Americans and Latinos and other minorities and transfer it to the largely English, Scottish, German, and other Northern European business elite, the wealth of some of whom began accumulating in the 19th century through slavery or criminal activities. Example, the Kennedys and whiskey. Example, free labor. And we can continue on and on and on and on. I wrote about all this just a few years ago. This is John Cole. Average household net worth of whites, $110,000. Average household net worth of African Americans, $5,000. So one is 110,000, the other is 5,000. People are going to say, oh, well, there are real other reasons. I can give a lot of reasons. Redlining, not being able to accumulate monies that others were able to. It's a whole lot of reasons. Anyhow, 1 in every 15 African American men are incarcerated in comparison to 1 in every 106 white men. If current trends continue, 1 of every 3 black American males born today can expect to go to prison in a lifetime, as can 1 of every 6 Latinos will do the same, compared to just about 1 in every 17 white males. So, if the UN report were taken seriously, the US would require a social revolution to even approach the normality of a France or Germany, where a handful of billionaires don't take food out of the mouths of hungry babies. And that is why the shock troops of Trumpism are so eager to discredit this report. This article was by Mr. Cole, friend of mine, Juan Cole, who has given us permission to reprint. Folks, telephone number 646-716-5812. Again, that is 646-716-5812. So what do you think about that? I'm going to close down a few windows here to see if I can actually get to my get to those things that you've written. For some reason, you know how it goes sometimes. Your technology does not cooperate. So as I close windows, which I think I got the last one closed, I will then now try to, well, that's not the last one, I don't think. I'll go ahead and try to, well, I closed them all, so I get to open it again. I go ahead and try to answer some of your questions. But look, folks, it's so important for you to see that. It's so important for you to not only see that, but for you to talk about that. Let's go ahead and see if we can get to our people now. All right, people, let's get to you. Get there, get there. All right, let's see what you're talking about. I see a whole lot of messages coming down. So we are going to get to those messages by hook or by crook. But as I get my computer going, since I'd like to remind you that this is a progressive show that needs your support, please go ahead and go to patreon.com, patreon.com, and become a supporter. We need you very badly. Just like, you know what is so funny? I was talking to this weekend. We had a lot of issues we were talking about, and a person didn't necessarily agree with me because what I said is they should have served Miss Sanders, in that restaurant. My contention is that she should have been served, and it's not because I'm a nice person But yes, I am a nice person. But that's not the reason that I thought she should have been served. The reason I thought she should have been served is because of exactly what they did today. And I don't know how many of you have taken a look at the news today, or her press conference today, but it actually seemed in her press conference that they were taking the high road. It is so important for us to understand what's going on here. When I saw it, I said, folks, that is the reasons why I told you guys they should have served her. Let me tell you what I would have done if I was a restaurant owner. If I was a restaurant owner, I would have brought her into the restaurant. I would have served her. And in the process, and I'll ask the waiters to go quite slow. And the reason I would have asked them to go very slowly is so that I had enough time to call more people. So because I think we have to be intellectually honest and intellectually consistent. We don't believe that photographer should have denied coverage for the gay person, for that gay person who wanted their picture, or the cake baker should have denied baking the cake for that gay person. We don't believe in that. We don't believe that you can just go ahead as a business say no, because you're a business, you're an entity. So, you can't not sell something to somebody. So we don't believe that as progressives. So I think we have to be, and I understand where you're coming from, folks, but we still have to be more consistent. Even if it's not from the heart, it ought to be from being practical. And if you see what Sarah Sanders did today, she went there and she made our case why she should have been served. And I sat there and I watched that. I sat there and watched Sanders make the case why she should have been served. And while some may just discount it, it's coming from her. We don't preach to we have a tendency to mostly preach to the choir. And that is dangerous. And the reason that is dangerous is that too many times when we do that, we don't see what the average person is seeing. And when we don't see what that average person is seeing, you know what happens? What happens then is we lose focus, and to put it bluntly, as blunt as I can, and we lose the damn election. And the reason we then lose the damn election is because we weren't where our people were. We weren't where our people were. And that is where we have to get, folks. I'm trying to get to our messages, and I'm having a hell of a hard time trying to get to it right now. So I ask you to forgive me as I go into my soliloquy and look out for where all your messages are. But for some reason, I don't know if it's a bug in this unit with Facebook or what, but you know what? If you wanted to continue the conversation as well, I would love for some of you to call 646. Let me get to the phone line. Put that up on the screen. 646-716-5812. Again, that is 646-716-5812. And I'm going to try once again to see if I can get this stuff to work, because I must talk to you. Let's see. Where are you, people? Coming down. Let's see if it'll come down again. But yeah, so again, the number is 646-716-5812. And as I process this, if it doesn't work, I'll try to go to the other computer and see if I can read some of your messages, because I really want to get to you on this one here. It looks like, come on, there we go. All right, let's see if I can see the comments. I'm going to try again. No, I don't want to comment. I want to see the comment. I don't want to comment. I want to see the comments. And I don't, sorry, wants me to log. Okay, that is terrible. Okay. Anyhow, it looks like I'm going to have to try from another screen. So bear with me 1 second, my dear people. Okay, Mike Cisak says the following. The owner of the restaurant, the owner of the restaurant, Red Hen, nobody's told, then follow. I can't see that right. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and try to pull it up somewhere else. You know, this is what real time is all about. Sometimes you have it, or sometimes you can get to it, sometimes you can't. And when you can't, you just go ahead and make things work the best you can. And you know what? Just maybe I'll get it this time. So bear with me as I come back. Bear with me, and it looks like I may be able to pull it up. I have 3 computers here and trying on all of them to see what we can do to make sure and get to you. So I think we're just about ready to get it. If it continues to behave itself, it just might work. It just might work this time. All right, let's see. How do I get to those messages now? Bear with me. It looks like I'm going to get to do it. I think I'm going to get to do it. Guess what? I think I'm going to get to do it. But I first have to make sure to disable the volume so that you get to those messages now. And that's what I feared happened, but that's all right. We are cool now. All right. Let's go ahead and see what some of you had to say. Okay, let's see. Mike Cisak or Daniel Ledo. Well, good for you. I imagine Daniel Ledo that I actually said, yes, I think Sarah Sanders should have been served. Let me go here. Michael Rudnan. Michael Rudnan says, when you're running your show solo, no tech support, no help. You're out every once in a while. Technical difficulties creep. That is so right. Michael Cisak. Daniel, I have seen real poverty in the Middle East. I have too, and I have seen real poverty in Panama. But let me tell you where else I've seen very, very real poverty. Right here in Houston, Texas. Real poverty, but see, a lot of people just don't see it. Michael Rudnan. Egberto, why aren't depraved heart murder charges never enforced upon corporations who kill their customers based on, you're right about that. That is making, what you're saying there makes a lot of sense. Let me make sure I got that right. You said, who kill their customers based and others due to heavy pollution. That is so true. That should be considered criminal, right? It should definitely be considered criminal. Okay, Michael Cisa, the southern states have a lower life expectancy because they have a much larger black population. All right. Okay, let me finish reading your statement, Mike, and I'm going to tell you why that's a very bad statement. Which, on average, have a much lower life expectancy. High white Asian population states have a much higher life expectancy, like Minnesota. Oh, boy. You know, that statement hurts me. And let me tell you why. I want you to understand the gravity of that statement that you've just made, Mr. Mike Cisak, my friend, my conservative friend. And this is something very few of you understand. If you make a statement like that says the following, well, you know, the only reason the birth rate, the birth defect rate, or the birth mortality is so bad in the South is because there are more black people. Okay. Understand what that means. Those black people are human beings. Those black people are Americans. And what you've just done is you've discounted their humanity. Man, if we just got rid of those black people, the rates would look kind of like the North. Or it is those black people who just happen to be this way that causes this CSEC. Is it that you guys are tone deaf? Or I don't want to call it tone deaf, but can't you see and understand when you make a statement like that, how you discard a whole group of people when you say, well, the only reason it's that way because black people. So you're acknowledging that you have kept black people as an underclass. Because I tell you what, we know one thing about black people. It's nothing genetic that have those conditions. But we can itemize all the things that have occurred to ensure that they don't have as much wealth, to ensure that they don't have as much education, to ensure that their culture has been decimated, to ensure all these things, right? We can lay that out. We can actually show that. So anytime I have a conservative or anybody comes out and say, the only reason these numbers are like that is because black people skew those numbers, I have to ask you, change the words and see how it sounds if the same things were said, same statements were made when it concerned white people. Because those are some dangerous words that you're stating there. It is saying the status quo is okay. The status quo is okay because the only reason the infant mortality rate is that bad is because of black people. But I tell you to go look at some other rates now. Now that I've given you the lecture on why it is not, I don't even care about sensitivity here. I care about morality here. That was an immoral statement. But let me tell you better. You know who have the same kind of mortality rates? If you go to Appalachia, white Appalachia, and you see the drug infestation, and you see the mortality rates, oh, guess what? You remember that report that came out that said, oh my God, white people are dying more than they used to before. They didn't say white people were dying as much as black folk or as much as Latino folks. They didn't say that. They said white people were dying more than they were before. And what's causing that change? White men suicide, white men overdosing, white men all these other things, and white people in general in the Appalachian areas and these poor areas doing poorly because of their economic and other conditions. Because of their economic and other conditions. Same thing that caused that same higher mortality rate you speak about in the black community. It is not about race. It's about economics. It's not about race. It's about fairness. It's not about race. It's about a country doing the right thing for everybody. And in your one statement there, because you are not necessarily in the Appalachian part of Appalachia where people die. Where white people die more so than white people anywhere else in the country. Because you are not there. But because you can hear of these statistics in the South where there is a larger black population, it was okay for you to go ahead and say, you know why those numbers are so bad? You know why more deaths are reported in these conservative states? Because they have more black people. Well, you know why the conservative states have more black people? Because they used to be slaves. Because there used to be an immorality where you got free labor. You see? We have to think. We have to think before we speak. We have to think before we speak. My brother CSAC. Now you can choose to take my words and use it how you wish. I hope you use it as a learning experience to never ever again make a mistake, an immoral mistake like that again. Because all these people that you just spoke about are all Americans. All got here differently. Some Americans got here, took the land and killed everybody on it to make sure they owned it. Some people were brought here and enslaved so that others could profit much more and better. Let's not talk about culpabilities. Let's not talk about who is bad. Let's not talk about who is to be feared. And let's solve problems. You know why? Because if we started going tit for tat for who deserve the most culpability for all the bad things that's happening on this hemisphere, if we started to really attempt culpability, and the difference between someone like myself and other people who speak truth is I'm not going to try to isolate it and say, oh, white people are bad. No. White people are just as victims as black people to a plutocracy. A plutocracy that depends on white supremacy to subjugate one group so that another group can feel empowered that they don't see what the plutocracy, that few on the top, are doing to decimate them. You get it? You get it? Do you understand it? Do you understand how this stuff works? Do you understand how a few can be empowered and stay empowered because they turn you into the guardians of the gate? That is what you got to understand. Mike Cisak, I hope you're learning this. I hope you keep coming back. But you got to learn this. Let me see if I can get some more messages. Okay, let's see. From Egberto, can't stand the facts. What facts are there, Mike? If you didn't understand what I said, ask for an explanation. Again, the facts are correct. Minorities in general, their mortality rate is higher. True. But what difference does it make? There are Americans as well. And the question is, why are their mortality rates worse? There are several reasons, some of them under their control and some not under their control. Same thing applies in white Appalachia. If you go to the Appalachian Mountains and all the cities that boundary that, you find the same death rates. Look it up. Look it up. We find murders, killings, suicide, and all the different pathologies that make up bad socioeconomic policies. So, Mike Cisak, stop trying to be right. Stop trying to make your point and try to educate yourself. Really, stop trying to be right. In this subject, I am. No, it's not a question here. In this subject, I am right. Okay? Now, let's continue with the people here. Let's go. When you're running your, let's see, show salt. Yeah, I know. We get into those little gotchas every so often. Michael Seaside, the Southern, I won't go back to that. Ledo, Egberto needs to travel more. Maybe then he could recognize actual poverty. Ledo, I know I've traveled quite a bit more than you have, not only in our hemisphere, but also across the world, China, Japan, Korea. So, we can talk any day you really want to. I got a call on the line here. Let's go 573. Come on in. You can come on in. Caller, you're on. You're on.
That's Mike.
Mike, is this Mike Cisak?
Hey.
Mike.
Yes.
Mike.
I want to clarify something.
Please clarify it.
Okay. Basically what I understand is that you're conflating different causes and problems.
Okay, go ahead and make that case.
That's what I'm not trying to do. I'm trying to correct your false stats that you're trying to throw out.
Okay, please do.
And saying that, look, the CDC tracks, a whole bunch of stuff, and I even posted a link.
Sure.
That basically says, hey, this particular population, ends up having on average, that doesn't mean everyone,
right?
But on average, has a slightly lower life expectancy.
Right.
Now, that could be a whole number of issues out there. It doesn't even have to be as far as health or whatever. It just that's where the facts are. That's what I'm just trying to say is that when you're comparing men as far as between the two men, for example, you have white men going at about 76 to 77 as far as average life as compared to black men who are averaging around 72.
Right.
Okay. That really kind of makes an impact, especially if you have a population, say for example, down in southern states, there's probably 30-40% black populations as far as the whole state.
Yes.
Up in Minnesota, you might have 2%.
Right.
That might be black population. Okay. So the numbers, when you do that, the life expectancy overall for the entire population of like Minnesota is actually higher than Canada.
Right.
Even though And that's what I'm just trying to say. Is that,
Mike, I get your point, but I
got to be careful.
I agree with you there, but let me correct something that I said and how it came across in writing. And by the way, I'm going to just extend the show for about 3 or 4 minutes so that I can get through this, and then I do my last ask at the end of the show. And first of all, thank you for sticking around, and thank you for calling in, because this is how we get stuff resolved, talking about it. Here is my concern with what you said. When you go ahead and say that because the black population expectancy rate is lower, and there's such a large percentage of blacks, let's say in Mississippi in the South, you are absolutely correct that makes the entire number go down as far as into, let's say, third world status or whatever it is that Juan Cole had to say. But when you make that distinction by race, right, it is almost giving an excuse to say, but if you discount black people, everything is okay. You may not, deep in your heart, you may not want to say that. But the mere fact that we don't look at it as the American life expectancy is the lowest than any other industrialized country. The reason that we shouldn't have to say the reason Americans' life expectancy is lower than other countries that have, let's say, more white population than we are is because we have more black people or something like that. What you have to say is the American population, the French population, the Canadian population, because we're not doing this stuff by racing. We're doing this by country and how a country handles its citizens. I know why the black mortality rate is so high. To some extent, it has even to do with murder. To some extent, it has to do with stress caused by a racist society. To some extent, it has to do with it. There are a lot of factors that, when added up, counts for those 2 or 3 years difference that we're talking about in the aggregate. But still, if we're talking about the population of a country, once you go ahead and say, well, if we exclude the black people, it's going to be better. To a black person, just like it would have sounded if I said that to a white person or to a Japanese and not to Asian person or whatever, you're saying, well, things would be okay otherwise, instead of saying, well, we have to change our socioeconomics to ensure that all get covered. And that's one of the problems I have with a whole lot of conservatives, because whether you have a good heart or not is not enough. What has to come behind that is policy that fixes the problems that you have. And you may say, I don't want to fix that problem because or whatever. That's not an answer. You have to fix the problems that you're in. That's what I'm talking about, Mike. You follow me?
Well, even with sort of, but you're still kind of giving a few wrong things here. Like in the UK, where they barely have 5% black population, their life expectancy, even though they have complete medical coverage and coverage as far as social net and all that kind of stuff, they're close to the same as far as the black population there as to here in the United States.
Look, again, that just proves another point.
And it's even worse. It's even worse in all the different countries of Africa.
Let me tell you something.
So,
okay? No, I understand that.
If you're going to be throwing some, you don't want to conflate the wrong thing.
I am not, because I can
help as far as
it's understandable. Sociologists, sociologists can tell you why, in general, in these societies, black life expectancy is so low comparatively. That's a different show, and I got to go for this one, Mike Cisak. But let me tell you, I'm glad you brought that up, because more people should research that. You know why? Because, again, like I said, on this one, I am right. Well, no doubt about it. But we'll talk. We'll continue to talk, Mike, and you continue to listen, and you continue to bring your stuff. And bring some more conservatives over, okay, brother?
Yeah.
All right, man.
I'll talk to you later.
We talk later. Okay, folks, thank you so kindly for listening to the show. But before I go, and by the way, those questions that I couldn't answer immediately on the show, rest assured that I'm going to, when I get sitting down and chilling out, I'll go ahead and reply to those that are requesting a reply. Now, folks, I want to remind you that this is a progressive show that needs your assistance, a progressive show that in order to survive, we need you to become patrons. Patreon.com/politicsdoneright. Patreon.com/politicsdoneright. What we're asking for is hundreds. We need hundreds of supporters at very minimal subscription rates. I mean, a cup of coffee. All right. And why do we want that? We want to have a base big enough to keep the support on. I'm going to tell you what I eventually want to do. We need right now in this venture, I'm overtaxed. I need a producer, numero uno. I need to get me a part-time producer, maybe a student or something that I'd love to give a stipend to so that they can help put the programs together, because this program has to be put together. After it's put together, we have to go ahead and download and process video and process audio and get it all to all the iTunes and all these other guys. All of that is a lot of work. It's done by a quantity of one. All the blogs have to be written for all the different websites. Right now, it's done by a quantity of one. All the research has to be done, and I don't write that which I do not research. Every now and then, I'll write a flimsy blog, and I'll tell you when I write the flimsy blog that, hey, this was just a regular thing that I thought that came, and if I don't have the facts out, I'll tell you I didn't have the facts. And I have such great readers. I have such great listeners. I have such great followers that if and when I screw up, they're always there. In fact, you see, Mike Cisak thought I screwed up. He probably still think I did. And we're going to go back and forth with that, I imagine, elsewhere. That is what I talk about this kind of media is about. First of all, we're going to cover things that are not covered on the mainstream media. We're going to go into details that are not gone in the mainstream media. And also, we have bidirectionality. What means is, just like how I let Mike Cisak have it, and he wanted to come back and let me have it, so he made a call. He called in, and he said, this is what I'm trying to say, man. And he made his case. And I didn't try to hide his case. Because you guys ultimately are the audience. You guys ultimately are going to discern. You guys ultimately are going to do your back and forth to see, well, did Egberto get it right now, or did Mike Cisak get it right, or is it somewhere in between, or what?
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Williams. This is the progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. Remember, you can also send me a tweet to EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Williams. Let us engage. It is politics done right.
1, 2, 3, 4.